trying to secure our food supply. That really touches all of us and is so critical when we think of how dependent our food supply is on hundreds of suppliers. It can actually break down. It's kind of brittle. In today's age, unfortunately, it is a pretty big vector out there. If, let's just say, a ransomware, they attack hospitals. So why wouldn't they go after, the food supply? I could see terrorists, attacking, the food supply as well. It's vitally important.
You're listening to Food Tech Talk, Supply Chain Insights from Farm to Fork, a podcast discussing the latest trends and technologies in the food and supplements industries, brought to you by Trustwell, featuring conversations with regulatory experts, quality and safety champions, and thought leaders across the industry. I'm your host, Lydia Adams, VP of Marketing at Trustwell. If you're loving the conversation, don't forget to subscribe and stay tuned to the end of the episode where you'll hear our guests tell us their key food industry predictions for 2025. All right, let's jump right in. On today's episode of Food Tech Talk, Supply Chain Insights from Farm to Fork, we're delighted to welcome Pippin Wallace, a seasoned DevOps and CloudOps specialist with deep expertise in securing high-scale, cloud-native platforms. He currently serves as Senior Staff Security Engineer at Favor Delivery and has worked across leading fintech and crypto companies, including Kraken and Figure and Oracle, focusing on building resilient systems, protecting sensitive customer data, and ensuring operational integrity. Today, Pippin joins us to discuss cybersecurity challenges facing food delivery platforms and how software integrity protects customers, as well as the crucial role of trust in digital services. Welcome to the show, Pippin.
Thanks, Lydia. Glad to be here.
Yeah, I'm excited for this one. I think this is a really top of mind topic for a lot of our folks here. So I'd love to hear kind of from you what drew you into specialize in security ops, and what excites you most about securing platforms that are directly impacting millions of consumers today.
My background started with, typical kind of the IT side of things, and that grew into more of a IT networking, and that grew into more of a IT networking software stack. And then out of that just grew my security interest in all of that. So kind of having a full suite of technologies, under my arms, it was time to switch to the security side and figure out how to protect it, take care of, the organizations, but our customers out there as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm sure you've been through several security challenges, but, is there a moment in your career where you really saw, a security challenge that taught you an unexpected lesson about, how to protect users in these types of high stakes environments?
So Log4j, as anyone, that lived through that understands that that impacted, it was in the Java logging library, and everybody uses Java and everyone uses logging. So that had this huge impact, and it was pretty easy to execute that particular vulnerability. And it was hard in kind of the application security or AppSec world to define exactly where all of those dependencies were in your supply chain. And it didn't just affect, our organization. It affected all of our SaaS providers, all of our vendors. It was just super wide. And so there was a pretty intense week or two of patching that. Most of my gray came from that event. However, we just had another one this Monday. So it's a timely question. This was a supply chain attack. So one of the other technologies that is incredibly ubiquitous is called JavaScript. So the application we're using to actually record this right now, there is no doubt that it has a JavaScript underpinning. And one of the main packages that JavaScript uses is called Node. And So NPM for Node Package Manager um, is probably used by every JavaScript developer out there. And somebody targeted one of the foundation developers of NPM, got into 18 of their packages, and fortunately for most of us, it only affected crypto. If any crypto was being transacted on your machine, did it affect that? However, it showed the incredible risk of kind of supply chain attacks nowadays. These were buried deep into transitive dependencies that nobody would have really thought to check for. So there's a huge SolarWinds was also a big deal, that affected our government pretty heavily, and national security. So application security is a big deal, and that's part of my focus. Obviously, the cloud, making sure our environment is safe, but yeah, pretty timely, because these attacks are getting widespread, and if you attack kind of the foundation, it really doesn't matter who you are, you're going to probably be affected.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm interested to know how you came to work at Favor. I'm very familiar with Favor, being in Austin, Texas. But for those that aren't, maybe you could share also kind of how, how you came to work for food delivery, and maybe the unique challenges that you're seeing in this space.
I'm not sure if customers know that Favor is a part of a really phenomenal brand called HEB. So yes, actually, Lydia, would you talk just a little bit about HEB so that folks understand, because it's just a Texas thing, but it goes beyond just loving a grocery store. It's almost fanatical to some degree.
Introducing Ask Reg by Trustwell, your AI-powered regulatory assistant from food safety to nutritional labeling. Get fast, accurate answers backed by verified sources across the US, Canada, EU, and more. Just $299 per year and get 25% off with code podcast25. To claim your discount, visit the link in the show notes. It really is. It's one of those where the store brand actually usually sells out more than the, universal brands in this case. And I think part of it with HEB is that they really give back in their communities, and so they're very visible, and so people certainly appreciate that. But also, the products they create are just fantastic. The experience. So yes, in Texas we love HEB. So cannot say that enough. Yeah,
working for a company that not only cherishes its community but also its employees was a big reason I chose. Food delivery. Favor had been bought by HEB, a few years prior. So I really looked for great people to work with. I'm old enough that it's great. I know my technology wheelhouse. That's fine. I'm going to go for a job there, but it was really the people, and the people at HEB and Favor are they're great. They're great. And that shows through, the products and the quality of service you get, through both of those companies.
Yeah, and I think this industry is interesting in the sense that they've got challenges on many sides, security being one of those. And so, have you seen kind of a unique, a difference in this type of food industry, food delivery versus maybe other industries that you've worked in?
So the other industries I've worked in, fintech and Oracle. Oracle is global and touches everything, and also a little bit on the crypto side with Kraken. Very, very software focused, financially focused on a few of those, but also enterprise focused with Oracle. But what has struck me as really unique is trying to secure our food supply. That really touches all of us, and is so critical when we think of how dependent our food supply is on hundreds of suppliers. It can actually break down. It's kind of brittle, and thinking about, okay, well, how do we secure our food supply chain so that us in big cities, don't have to go to the hills to, dig up a carrot or try and find a squirrel. So in today's age, unfortunately, it is a pretty big vector out there. If, let's just say, a ransomware, they attack hospitals. So why wouldn't they go after, the food supply? I could see terrorists, attacking, the food supply as well. So it's vitally important, not just pretty important. It's really important, to take care of all of us. So until we get that little human battery, that we can just come home, sit on the charging pad for 10 minutes and be like, oh yeah, I'm all good. We need some other source of energy. So I'm happy to be working for a company that actually values its customers and its employees, but also to be working, for something that is it's actually super important for all of us.
Yeah, I mean, I agree. And I think, on this show, we talk a lot about, the supply chain and food safety, but there's always going to be, data and software and, technology that's powering that. And that has to remain just as safe as our supply chain. And so, what advice would you have for companies that are really looking to kind of beef up that security? And what should they be looking for today to be prepared for, any eventuality like you mentioned earlier?
We all run applications. Every company is a software company to some degree. And most of the software that companies make has some customer facing side of it. So taking application security, very, very important. Taking it as it's just paramount to just do more than the compliance checks, because you could go through your SOC 2 or your PCI or your, GDPR, whatever, and check those boxes. But in all honesty, you should really take it much further. I'm not discounting, compliance. I think it gets us going in the right direction, but really take it further. And by further, all software is built on dependencies, right? We all incorporate other libraries that others have written, lots of open source software. And what the NPM vulnerabilities from earlier this week showed us is that we have to do a better job of pinning our software to reliable versions and not just saying, hey, pull down the latest version. So if you have in your supply, in your CI/CD pipeline, if you have something that says CI/CD stands for continual integration of your software and continual deployment of your software. So it's your whole software development lifecycle kind of thing. If you are just going out there and pulling in the latest package that may have been attacked and taken over, which was the case on Monday, then you put yourself at risk. If you pin your packages to a version and only update when a security vulnerability has been released or a feature that you need has been released, you will save yourself a lot of grief. You'll just be able to sleep a little easier at home. But also make sure that your supply chain, so all of the SaaS providers that you rely on, make sure that they're doing security as rigorously as well. I actually don't send out a security questionnaire to my vendors. I get the CISO on the phone and we actually have a conversation. You can deduce so much more in regards to their security posture when you are having a conversation versus just, them filling out a spreadsheet. So, we take security very, very seriously here. We also, here's another one that actually is, it's just emerging, but it's really, really important. Everyone knows about endpoint detection and response. So on your laptop right now, you work for a company, they probably have some sort of antivirus software that they run on, your company's computer that they've given to you. And so they manage it and they make sure that it stays safe. They keep it updated and things like that. There is a new area of security called application. EDR stands for endpoint detection and response. ADR stands for application defense and response. And what this is it actually sits at runtime, right where your application is being deployed to your customers. And it can put a boundary around your application permissions. So let's say your application, I'm going to take the Log4j example. It's a logging software, right? So it needs to write to disk. But that's primarily its job. It gets information, it writes it to the hard drive. The vulnerability that came out, it asked for a network connection. So, hey, I need to get out and send, I need to exfiltrate some data and I need to send it out to the bad guy's server. Well, a logging piece of software should never need to do that. It also needed to execute some arbitrary code. Logging software shouldn't need to do that. So what this application defense and response can do is set up a perimeter, or basically permissions, for your application to say, if this application can only write to disk. It can't do network calls. It can't execute arbitrary code. And so if we have that in place, if I had that in place for my organization back when Log4j hit, there would have been no velocity loss. This was an all hands on deck issue. All the developers, all the security folks were trying to really mitigate this. And it took, a couple of weeks to roll out all the patches. Something like this that puts boundaries on basically your libraries and your function calls and what they can and can't do is really huge, because you're not sure what the next vulnerability would be, but chances are it's going to make a network call. Chances are it's going to try and write, execute some arbitrary code. It's like, oh, hey, let me run this extra little script. But if you put boundaries on all this, that is a huge saving grace. So it's called ADR, application defense and response. And I think all of the companies out there who are concerned about their security should consider something like that, but also ask your vendors, also ask your SaaS providers, how are you guys really protecting us? And make sure that they're doing what they do. Everyone sends out a SOC report, but I ask for the pen test report and I say, great, what vulnerabilities did you get? How fast did you patch them? What is your patch cycle for new vulnerabilities? I press them for, those extra details.
Yeah, I think that's really good advice. I mean, you are going to be connected and you have to rely on your vendors, your suppliers, your providers to have that same level of security. Absolutely. Another one that we talk about a lot here is consumer trust and, brand reputation. And, in a lot of cases, it's related to a food recall and what that can do. But I think there's similar repercussions for, security breaches, those types of situations. And so, talk to me a little bit about how creating that secure environment, even if consumers may not understand it completely, but how does that help them to trust your brand and continue to purchase from you or work with you?
That's a great question, Lydia, and one that I feel like we should do a better job of kind of advocating what we are doing for, our customers. I know it's not sexy to say, hey, we take care of you guys from a security standpoint. However, I believe, and I realize, that I have an aluminum foil hat and I'm probably, see the world through a very small tunnel. But if a company said, hey, we really take your security to the highest degree, and here's what we do to protect your customer data, your PII, or personal identifiable information. I think that would go a long way. I'm going to get on my soapbox for just a second. There's a second thing I feel like we can do as corporations. And I feel like we can actually reach out and let some customers know, and this isn't really being done, but let customers know if we happen to see their email on a data breach. It's, and we're like, oh, your email showed up in this big data breach report, and a number of passwords. You should probably, here's the data, here's where you can go to see your data, and here's how to remediate, your risks. Because we're kind of the pulse of a lot of the, security things that are going on around the world, and our consumers are really, without them, we wouldn't exist. And if we take care of them just a little bit more, go that extra mile, can you imagine how that response would be to somebody who's like, oh my gosh, you just helped me protect my personal digital identity. I am yours forever. I am your customer, like bar none. I feel like, yeah, from a security perspective, I feel like, a company like that, I'm going to sign my whole family up for it. It's just going to be like, yep, I will be your poster child. I'll stand on the curb with an arrow pointing, to your business.
Yeah, and I feel like being in the food delivery space, we've had a couple folks on our show in that space, and I think it's very interesting because it's, in a way, a third party. I mean, you're getting the food from a restaurant, you're bringing it to the consumer, and there's that period in between where you're responsible. So how do you kind of work with whatever the restaurants, the stores, where you're actually kind of delivering for them, and how do you make sure that that level of security kind of stays across the whole experience?
That's tough because various vendors use various points of sales equipment. So their POS system, might not be the most secure setup. So we absolutely try and work with each and every one to make sure it's maximized for security, even if it is, a little bit deprecated of technology. So that's super important. Also on the support side of the things, when somebody calls in and says, hey, I have an issue, or I want to say how great you guys were, then, we take anybody's personal information. We make sure that is, redacted so that, even though there might be, a chat that happened, names aren't shared, phone numbers aren't shared, pictures aren't shared, so we take that very seriously internally, even though, some of us may have the right permissions to potentially access that information. It's just not shared. And that goes that extra step, to just take care of our customers that way. I really like that.
Yeah, I agree with that. And you mentioned something that just got me thinking about really like that user experience. Your customers are using you for convenience in the first place, and you're also trying to keep them secure. And I imagine that this is all going on behind the scenes. So how do you kind of just balance that convenience while also just keeping, security top of mind?
So security can be a hurdle, right? It can be kind of a speed bump for any application. Let's say you're getting an application in real time and you need to actually put a filter on that for just a second and make sure that, there's no personal identifiable information that's flowing through. Then that takes a moment of compute cycle. So there is that. And I think that is a business decision. I obviously try and advocate for, the highest level of security, but I understand that in the end, we need to deliver a product that, just doesn't scare people away. If they had to do, a thumbprint plus an iris scan plus, put in, their mother's maiden name and, all these other things, then they're probably not going to choose, our application. So it's a balancing act out there. I feel like we can do about, 90, 95% of, the best security and still deliver, a great application experience. That extra 5%, I would do for, me and my family to say, hey guys, I know this is going to be a little bit of a pain, but, take the steps to do these extra security things and you will not worry.
Yeah, because I think this is one of those topics where a lot of consumers just choose to not think about it. Like, oh yeah, I've got my password here, and I've got this there, and when you think about the actual impact, whether that's to an individual who has their personal information leaked, or a company having a major data breach, the risk is high that that's going to severely impact your company, impact you as an individual. And so it almost seems like you would have to kind of, educate on like the risk mitigation that comes with this level of security. I mean, have you seen that?
I honestly haven't seen it enough to, educate the consumers saying, what we are doing is protecting you. And we're protecting you from, identity theft. You never want to go through identity theft. But some of my colleagues have had their identities stolen, and it can take years and really disrupt, a person's life to have that happen. So I don't know, having that experience and just lived a bunch of life, I want to make sure that my customers are as safe as possible. And I think everybody needs to do the same. And I think that if we all were to educate our customers and say, hey, this is just the bottom line. This is table stakes for what we have to do to protect you responsibly. Multi-factor authentication, right? We all have, a chance to put in the 2FA codes. Second factor authentication is sometimes what it's called. Or you have a thumbprint reader or something else. In all honesty, everyone should be doing that, at least for anything that is financially related. Your whole digital identity should be behind MFA, multi-factor authentication, in some way, shape, or form. That's my little soapbox. But if every company just preached this, or every company just insisted, then all the consumers are like, okay, well, this is just how it is. It takes that extra step, but it's now normal instead of, oh, wow, this company, wow, they're really being persnickety about, all this setup. And do I really want to have to do that each and every time? We're trying to make it a lot easier. MFA came out. Now we're, shifting to passwordless, which is huge. So we're making advances, which is great, but it's hard to evangelicalize that, out there when not everyone's doing it.
Yeah. And I mean, you mentioned some of the things that are, kind of going on now. And as we look ahead, what do you see as kind of like the next emerging technology that is going to make a difference, to companies' security?
AI, period. So you want to make sure that whatever model, I'm going to call them a model, an AI model, whether it's ChatGPT, whether it is Gemini through Google or Claude through Anthropic, whatever big foundation model you're using, ensure that they are not using your data to train their model. If they are, then you can have a data breach without really being breached. You are giving your data up, and it is just going to require some inventive prompting to those LLMs. You question those LLMs to get that data back. So you're kind of breaching yourself if you do that. And there's a new technology. So I don't know if everyone's heard of APIs, but an application program interface, it's the way a machine talks to a machine, really. If you want your point of service to integrate with one of your favorite delivery applications, then you use their API to connect. In the equivalent of API in the AI world is called MCP, or Model Context Protocol. And it allows for LLMs to talk to LLMs, or large language models. I apologize. These language models to talk amongst themselves. And if you connect to an MCP server, and you are the client, or if you are the MCP server and you're sharing your data with MCP clients, you need to really consider what you're sharing, how you can protect that, how you can redact it in real time. We're using some technology to redact in real time any PII that is going to or coming in from going to a model or coming back from a model, so that we're safe. It also takes care of, anything, because we have a lot of programmers, it takes care of, anything that might be suspicious code, malicious code, things like that. So just think AI and think how to use it responsibly. Even if you sign the paper, there's a company out of China called DeepSeek. They have this great LLM. A lot of people have used them. And of course, you could probably sign a piece of paper with them to say that they will never use your data to train. However, I wouldn't trust that. I would make sure that, the piece of paper has some backing. So if you use a company like Google, one of their Gemini models, you can be sure that if you sign that contract and they are not going to train, that they're going to take care of, they are going to abide by that contract. Some of the other foundation models, I'm not 100% convinced that that would be the case, but do your due diligence with them as well.
Yeah, no, that's really good advice. And I think something that, we get so excited about the potential with AI, we have to say, okay, how are we using this? Is it, responsible and safe? And so, yeah, that's great advice. Just a couple more questions for you. So, I think post-COVID, we've all gotten used to having nearly everything delivered to us. And food is just one of those things. What do you see just kind of overall in the delivery supply chain space that, maybe is going to happen in the near short term, or, in the long term, that might be disruptive, might be good? What's your future prediction for that kind of industry right now?
Drone delivery is going to, I think, be a big disruptor. And I think it is going to be for the good. Granted, we don't want drones flying over our heads all the time, so maybe they have to work on prop noise and things like that, or make sure there's a longer, little delivery cable that drops down. But yeah, there's a couple companies that are working on this right now in the U.S. They have successfully done this elsewhere, and we are looking forward to partnering with them to try this out. At least in the Austin area. Lydia, if you don't mind signing up for our beta customer, that would be great.
No, that's fantastic and really interesting to hear. So, and since we love to bring everything back to food, my last question for you is, what is a memorable dining experience that you had as a consumer, and what made that difference for you?
This is going to go back to Texas, but so we were driving down the road, and so I actually live in Montana. So I'm kind of north Texas, I think they call it.
Just a little bit.
Just a and somebody was smoking chilies, and the smoke wafted across the street into my window, and I almost had an accident because it was like, oh my gosh, I need to know what that smell is. And I went over to, a little chili roaster, and they were making them, there's a taco stand nearby. And I got to have some, fresh roasted chilies, and oh my goodness, it was an amazing experience. Yeah. I was really, I'm like, how can I bottle that up and take that back with me?
I have to agree. Chilies are basically my favorite too. So, and that does happen. I have had that happen in Austin, where I'm like, there's a food truck around here and I need to locate it like right now. So, no, that is awesome. Pippin, when you are securing your company, what does your security tech stack look like?
I'll kind of start at the at a very base level, and that is when the programmer is actually writing their code. They're using their laptop, and usually an IDE, which is an integrated development environment. And right there, we actually inject some security awareness around various coding patterns that are best practice for security. So we kind of help the developers with some just-in-time notifications about, oh, you're using this SQL query. However, you didn't put some parameters in there to sanitize the input. And that's where SQL injection comes into play. That is a vulnerability that many applications have. And so sanitization of the inputs is really important. And just you get that into their flow and into their feed, and they're like, oh yeah, you can even supply a little bit of code to show them, here's how you would sanitize an input. And above that is where we get into all of the additional pieces of code that come in and support the foundational code that our developers write. So these are all the packages that we discussed, like NPM packages and your underlying OS layer. And this is where, we leverage a tool called Lineage that helps us with understanding all of these packages, understanding their vulnerabilities, and mitigating them before they actually go into production. So it kind of scans all of our code prior to that, and helps us mitigate it before it actually gets released to production. But they go one step further, and they do actually a gold software offering, which is basically they will supply the OS, the underlying OS, all the packages you need to run your application, and make sure that it is secure, even if some of the packages that you pull into your environment, some of the packages, let's say the maintainer didn't actually fix that vulnerability, Lineage will patch it. They'll pull down that developer's code, fix it, put it into these gold images, and give you basically a secure image to run, which is huge. That takes a lot of stress off me, a lot of stress and time off our developers. So gold open source is pretty cool. And then above that, when we're running it in real time, that's where that application defense and response comes in, and that's a company called Raven. And actually, Raven and Lineage are working together to kind of present a full suite of the software, the full supply chain software security setup. So that's really cool, and I'm working with them on that.
Yeah, no, it sounds like Lineage has definitely been key. So thanks for sharing that. Well, Pippin, it's been great talking with you, and just kind of getting more details from your experience and expertise and cybersecurity and everything there. And so thank you so much for joining us.
I'm gonna throw on one last pitch. Everybody get a password manager, use a password manager, get all your passwords in there, make sure they're unique, and take care of your own digital identity first. That's it. Lydia, thanks.
No, thank you so much. Really appreciate it. And I'll sign up for the drone trial and make sure I've got a password thing going on as well. So really appreciate it. Thank you.
Thanks, Lydia. Take care. Bye.
Thank you for joining us for another bite-sized nugget of food tech talk, supply chain insights from farm to fork. Make sure to subscribe. And if you love the podcast, leave us a review on Apple Podcasts, YouTube Music, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts. To learn more about Trustwell and request your free demo of our technology platform that connects food formulation, products, nutrition analysis, and compliant labeling with traceability, recall readiness, and supply chain transparency, please visit us at www.trustwell.com. and click Get Started or click the link in the show notes to learn more. Thanks for listening.